I have a nonprofit organization that specializes in creating unique literary opportunities via comic books, positive hip hop, and financial education. So, I really, really get deep with the youth. I teach them things through a vehicle that resonates with them. So that's why we use comic books and positive hip hop.
Welcome back to another episode of Attractive Mindset. And today's guest, this man, this gentleman, this scholar, this person that just drops knowledge and doesn't even have to try. He's putting out good things into the community and, definitely receiving them back. And so I just want him to explain a little bit more about himself. We got Mr. Brandon in the building.
What's happening, Rich? What's happening? How you doing, boss man?
I'm doing good. How you, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm just living another day, man. Trying to do what my uncle told me, man. He said one thing really, really simple was, if you're not a difference maker, what difference do you make? So I'm just trying to make a difference out here in this world, man. So that's all it is at the end of the day, man. It's as simple as that. It gets complex in the things that you do and how you do them. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make a difference.
Facts. And so tell the people a little bit about what differences you make and what kind of categories.
Absolutely. So just to take you back before I bring you forward, one of the things that I was searching for was purpose many moons ago. And I had a father that always instilled certain things in me. And so with that being the case, purpose kind of found me in the way of entrepreneurship. And so one of the things that I first started doing was real estate, because I felt like, you know what, that's one of the most important decisions that any American makes, graduating, getting married, having a baby, and buying a house. So I wanted to be a part of that process. So I found purpose in one of the most important things or decisions that families could make. So then that turned into, okay, what else could I do? Then I started doing taxes. Every year, people got to start doing taxes, right? Mm-hmm. And so that became another thing and another way in which I would help individuals, save money, even increase their bottom line through consulting and things of that nature. Just from an entrepreneurship standpoint. But when I really, really think about my difference in what I do, I have a nonprofit organization that specializes in creating unique literary opportunities via comic books, positive hip hop, and financial education. So, I really, really get deep with the youth. I teach them things through a vehicle that resonates with them. So that's why we use comic books and positive hip hop. So,
got it.
Right now our youth today is so distracted, TikTok, and so many different things. And so we try to find a way to reach them that they not only understand, but they could relate to. And so I use that vehicle to teach them things like discipline, focus, responsibility, accountability. So we do many different things like that. And then at the end of the day, once we're able to do things like that, we teach them how to make money. You know what I'm saying? So we start with the things and we reach them where they are. So we use hip hop to do that. And then once we have them, at that point, we take it to the next level and say, well, you're young. I know you guys are always talking about securing the bag and that's your focus. Okay, well, this is how you do it in a way in which that's legal and sustainable and something that you could use going forward. And it's a life skill that's transferable to even your brothers and sisters and whomever else, even your parents. So, that's kind of where, the long and short of my impact. It's been dealing with the youth. It's been helping people find homes. And in that process, you become a therapist. You become a friend. And then I find myself in spaces and places where I'm doing advocacy in terms of like social justice. So it's a lot of different things, bro.
Got you. Okay. Nah, that's dope. That's dope. And so you told us what the purpose is. And so who would you say Brandon is? Where are you from, man?
I'm from South Florida, born and raised in Fort Lauderdale. I've been here all my life, and I don't necessarily see myself going nowhere else.
Okay. And so do you feel like your environment is what really triggered that kind of mindset to want to develop yourself into this kind of figure that's in the positive kind of light?
I think that evolved over time. I think that was something that was instilled in me as a kid. So just to give you an example, like my father is a very, very responsible, straightforward, no nonsense type of individual, and he instilled, integrity and honor and things in me as a kid. And so I remember us going on a vacation when I was younger. Never forget it. It was in Orlando. It was their theme park at the time. It was Blizzard Beach, but I don't think it no longer exists. And the people we were with, and I won't say any names, were willing to go like around a bush to get inside for free. Now, nobody would have stopped us. It was a clear path to do it. But my father was like, I'm a hardworking man. What do I look like having all this money in my pocket, possibly getting caught, essentially stealing theme park tickets, essentially. And small things like that throughout my life really just showed me the best thing, no matter how easy it is to do something else, is the right thing. And so that was instilled in me young, to kind of pursue that. Although, we've been influenced by a lot of different things, your friends, the negative aspects of hip hop, the media, television, video games. But I always had a solid foundation. And with that solid foundation, I always put myself around people that kind of had a similar mindset. So as I got older, I began to get influenced by certain individuals that made hope dope, that made positivity something that wasn't like whack or corny. Because, when I was younger, you talk about things like, and not that, you know what I'm saying, this is something I listen to particularly, but when people would say like positive hip hop or Christian rap, you would already think it's not jamming. And that's just a mindset and a mind state that a lot of people had and have. And I had to get out of that really quickly, because I understand the power of messages. And so I've had some people in my life after having that foundation to influence me down this path of get out in the community, make some things happen. Don't only just be for yourself, be for others, and things like that. So yeah, I absolutely would say that there have been some influences that have gotten me to this positive path. My father being the foundation, and then now one of my business partners being someone else that kind of got me in this direction.
Got it. Okay. And so growing up, do you feel like you had to be pulled in this type of direction, or were you caught up in sports? Did you do music yourself?
Yeah. So, what was happening, was something really interesting. So, my parents, when I was between 3 and 5, got a divorce. And so my father spent a lot of time with me. Right. And in spending that time with me, like he created a monster in his mind, but a good one. Like he really made sure that education was important. He really made sure that values was important. Right. So when I was young, I really, really was like a straight A student. Right. I believe to this day I could have been a valedictorian at any school I wanted to be, but what got a hold of me was the 2 F's, football and females. Right. So I started playing sports, and that's all I started to care about. And once I started playing sports, and once I started to become myself, I was intelligent, I was smart, I was funny, I had personality, then the females came. So around like 5th grade, like I started getting the attention of older women. And that's what kind of started me to get not so serious about my academics, and then to start doing things that I shouldn't have been doing at such an early age. And then the music, and then the media. And so I was getting pulled in a direction, but my foundation was so strong, you could only pull me but so far. You get what I'm saying? And so, yeah, just like any other normal kid, man, like I had those influences and things, but like I said, my foundation was so rock solid. You couldn't get me to go so far that I would end up in jail or in trouble and things of that nature like that, to that extent.
Got you. Nah, definitely. That's definitely a key. And so even growing up in music, that's our era of music. That's 90s music. And so growing up in the golden age of hip hop.
Absolutely.
Having those influence of, Brand Nubian, Das Effects, like all of these type of people, even though they weren't necessarily positive, they weren't necessarily negative. Like,
Correct.
A lot of today's music is more catered towards,
there was a balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with today. There is no balance. You know what I'm saying? So there were guys like KRS-One, Public Enemy, You had a very conscious side of hip hop. You had a very neutral side. You had a party side. And then you started to see what they considered and they coined gangster rap. But all of it had its place. And then all of it, to some degree, as hip hop was growing, had a mainstream appeal. Now the mainstream appeal, there is no conscious rap in mainstream now. That's what rap came from. You know what I'm saying? And so those origins are no longer here. So if you're not being taught at home as I was, it's going to be a lot harder to resist the temptations that I was able to resist because I was grounded. I was grounded in something solid. I had a father in my life. I had 2 mothers in my life. I actually had a stepfather in my life. So I had a lot of different men in my life guiding me. And so when my older brother, which was only he was my stepbrother, but my brother nonetheless was only 7 months older than me. So we were kind of on the same wavelength. So he really couldn't pull me in a direction because I knew what he knew and he knew what I knew. And so, but I had other friends that had brothers that were 4 or 5 years older than us, right? But because again, I'm always said, me being so rooted and grounded in certain fundamentals, I just wasn't gonna go too far off the reservation ever. No matter what influence got around me. So although the music was powerful, although the media was powerful, I just thank God for my foundation. You know what I'm saying? And I just wish more people had that. So anytime that they would go astray, they knew how to proverbially come back home. And that's what I would always know how to do. It's like, yeah, I tried that. Yeah, they told me the stove was over there that's hot, and I want to kind of touch it. Never mind. You know what I'm saying? And so just having that thing to repel me from that is something that I could never lose sight of.
Got you. And so at what point did you go vegan?
Okay, so I went vegan around the same time I went quote unquote positive to the point of right now. And so what it was a transition. So, you know, once you start to do one thing, it kind of has the inertia or the momentum for you to do another. Right. So at the time, this is when I was becoming a real estate agent. This is at the time that I was becoming a tax preparer. And so because I was doing new things, I was getting in shape, going to the gym, stuff like that. What I was seeking was, I don't want to say a cheat code, but a way in which I would be able to keep up with myself. Because I had always been somebody that was doing a lot, but I was going to start doing more. So the reason why I kind of jumped on that bandwagon was just based on the fact that doing a little research, seeing some YouTube videos, reading some books. Dr. Sebi at the time was a new thing on the scene, and he was, you know, speaking about the electric body and alkalinity and all these different things, and how this is the way to wealth, which is your health, you know. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna just try it. You know, that it was literally me challenging myself, and I always do Jedi mind tricks on myself, like, you can't do it, you can't do it. And so I literally just said, you know what, I'm gonna try it. So what I first did was, because I think gradual change is the way in which you go about change, because anything that changes too fast usually isn't real.
True.
And so what I did first was, I didn't eat pork, so I didn't have to worry about that. I cut out chicken and beef immediately. Just said one day that's what I'm gonna do, and I did it.
But even when you cut chicken and beef out, you still ate fish?
Yeah.
Okay.
That this is the gradual part that
Gotcha.
I'm kind of walking you down, because like I said, if I just would have went straight cold turkey, I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah.
Right. So I did chicken and beef. So I was doing turkey and fish. So then I got rid of turkey. And then you have a classification for people, pescatarian. So then I became a pescatarian for like 2 years. So after that, I became a vegetarian. And then after that, I became a vegan. So it was a process, because I've noticed and I've seen people have adverse effects, because you have to recognize that although you're doing the right thing, your body is telling you like, yo, I need those hormones. I need that blood. I need that flesh. I need those things that you've been giving me for so long because that's what's been sustaining me.
Yeah.
So when you make that immediate change like that, it's not always good. I've talked to people that end up saying that they have vertigo or they break out in hives.
Oh, damn.
By going this route, but your body is just really repelling the toxins that you've been putting in for so long. So because they have that experience, they now think it's a bad thing, when indeed it's actually a good thing. But I knew not to put myself through that experience because, as I said, any change that I try to make in my life, I prepare for it. I make sure that I say, okay, if I'm going to stop doing something, let's lay this out. Let's plan this out. Unless it just has to be drastic. And so that's where the vegan mindset came from. It literally came from the fact that I understood that being lighter in terms of feeling would give me more energy because, like I said, I was on the pathway to doing more. So I just tried something. So when I cut out the chicken and beef for like 14 days, I noticed a difference. I wasn't groggy when I woke up. I noticed that on my feet, I was a little lighter. I noticed that my mind was a little clearer. So because of those things, I just kept it going, bro. I saw results. I heard it was good for you. It started to make sense to me from the standpoint of, like, we don't have claws, nor do we have canines that can shred. So it didn't make sense to me that we would be drinking, number one, cow's milk, because milk is for a mother to give to their offspring. So now we're drinking cow's milk. So I had to cut that out. It didn't make sense. Like, you wouldn't give your mom's milk to a baby cow. So why would I be drinking the milk of a cow being given to me?
True.
So I started the process and make sense of things. Okay, so with that same cow, so that's milk, we have beef. I don't jump on the back of the cow, bring it down, kill it, and eat it, because that's not what my digestive system nor my natural biological mechanics are supposed to be doing. So because of these things, and I started the process, like when I look at the animal kingdom, when I look at human beings, when I look at what doctors tell you not to do when you get sick, stop drinking meat, stop drinking milk, don't eat red meat. Well, if you're telling me to do that while I'm sick, I shouldn't be doing it, period.
Yeah.
Like, I should already be giving my body the necessary nutrients from the jump.
I heard chicken actually brings a lot of phlegm to your system.
It does.
A lot of mucus.
A lot of sodium, a lot of salt with the chicken that we eat, bro. So it can lead to high blood pressure. So once I started to not only feel better, then I started looking and delving into the science. And then I just started using my own common sense in my mind and estimation. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't knock nobody for what they do. I used to live that life. And then when I get into conversations with people, they always try to corner me with certain stuff. And at first, it's almost like religion. Like, what happens is you start to learn something and you try to tell somebody, well, I'm a Christian or I'm a Muslim now, right? And they start to challenge you and you get defensive. So when people would challenge me before about, oh, you going Muslim, brother? Why you doing this? And like, they almost felt like it had to be just this radical change in who I was as a person. And they would challenge me and say, well, I do this because of this. And it always just sounded like an excuse to do what they wanted to do because they've been doing it. It really didn't have any value to it, because at the end of the day, my argument has become, now that I've educated myself, I don't care about the fact that I can live off eating chicken and I can live off eating beef. I want to do the thing that's going to put me in an optimal position to function and live as long as I can. And so if I'm being told not to eat these things by doctors that are being the ones that are supposed to have the information, right, that you trust, why would I now not take that information and then make a decision for myself to say, well, if you're telling me not to eat this now, why was I ever eating it in the first place?
True. And so do you feel like they're saying that just because of the state of the FDA in America, or just in general?
Ask that again. Let me make sure I understand what you're saying.
So we know the food system in America is drastically different. Like, they corrupt the food system and they definitely target us through the food. But do you feel like when these doctors say that thing, it's because of the American process to it, or if we have like farm animals and we really grow our own things, it'll be a different kind of story.
I do believe it'll be a different kind of story. I do believe that there's a difference in farm raised and things that are unnaturally processed and GMOs. So although I'm not advocating for eating flesh or eating meat, right? I would advocate, if you're going to do those things, you should be the one that's doing it. If you're going to eat fish, go out and catch it in the wild. If you're going to go out and eat that cow, make sure it's on your farm. That's what I would advocate for. So that's number one. Number two, as it relates to the relationship with doctors and big pharma, I think that's an interesting relationship. Sometimes knowingly, it's almost like knowing your supplier. Because again, we have to look at the language. They're selling drugs.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, doctors will tell you you have something in order to sell you a drug. They have to classify or name something in order to prescribe you a drug for it. It has to have a diagnosis. And so oftentimes I do think that relationship kind of clouds the judgment of diagnosis, because that's how doctors eat. At the end of the day, if they're not taking a holistic approach, they eat from the fact that they tell you that you have ADHD. They eat from the fact that they tell you that you have these things. And oftentimes they're mixed diagnosis and things of that nature. And so we find ourselves in a very tricky situation because, as they take the Hippocratic oath to like do no harm and make sure they're helping people, they're still beholden to the fact that they got that $200,000 loan, and they're still beholden to the fact that the way in which you make money is through insurance companies. And you're still beholden to the fact that through insurance companies, you need to sell drugs, and y'all have this relationship that's circular. It makes it very difficult to be ethical, right? And then oftentimes, because of the way in which the Western system is, I don't even sometimes blame doctors, because they're taught a certain thing to be in that system.
Facts.
So sometimes I honestly believe it's unknowingly that they're hurting and destroying the bodies and the minds of people. I do believe that, but there are others that understand exactly what they're doing, and it's no different from somebody selling drugs and selling actual dope. Like I don't see the difference in the relationship.
And so now, what about the two types of vegans? I always run into either one of the two. So they do it for health purpose, or they do it for the animals.
Right. So you want to know which one I am?
Well, I would figure you're for the health purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah. The animal part is just a byproduct. But at the end of the day, like right now, I'm far from a hypocrite. So I'm just as transparent as they come. I got on a leather belt. Right. So my consciousness on the idea of the animal doesn't go that far. But at the end of the day, I think if we recognized and realize how damaging animal agriculture is, I think if we recognized and realized the fact, or saw the destruction and the slaughtering of animals, I think that end up on our tables and end up in our homes, I think we'd have a different outlet. We're so disconnected and so removed and so distracted, these things don't come up in our mind. But at the end of the day, if it's Fido or Spike, a dog being treated or mistreated rather, it's at the top of our conscious, because that's one of the things that Americans focus on. We focus on dogs and cats, but we're not focused on pigs and cows. But what's the difference? Well, the difference is the branding in our brains. Dogs being man's best friend, right? But they eat dogs in like Korea.
Facts.
They don't treat it no different, but we treat it different, and then we have a different emotional attachment. But a cow is an animal too, deserving of respect. And so even though a pig in shit is not necessarily something you want to be playing around with, why is it not due the same God-given rights as the dog? Or the same respect as the dog? Is it because it plays in shit? Or is it because now we have this idea in our mind that we should be revering and respecting cats and dogs?
And so I've always thought the same thing when it comes to like shrimp, pigs, because I don't really eat. I don't eat ham.
Right.
I won't say that I don't eat pork because
Pepperoni.
Pepperoni, or like if it comes in that kind of form, like whatever.
Yeah.
But I won't, like, if it's just straight ham, nah, I'm not gonna target that. Or
Right.
I don't eat shelled seafood. And so fish is like the only seafood that I eat.
I got you.
And even in me eating that kind of way, like, I don't know, just the industry and the structure of our food kind of pyramid, because my ex is actually who introduced the term to me. And
Which one? Pescatarian, vegan, vegetarian, what?
flexitarian.
Okay, never heard of that one.
And so it's an actual thing. I thought she
Okay.
made it up. And so a flexitarian is somebody who can eat whatever they want, but they like 85% eat green.
Gotcha.
And so I'm definitely not 80%, but I'm like a solid 60.
Okay.
I'm like, or no, maybe like 50, but half of the time I eat really well.
Yeah.
And then the other half of the time I don't eat bad, but it's not well.
Do you feel a difference when you eat a certain way or you live a certain way, you get rest? Do you work out at all? Or?
I don't work out at all. And so that, is the testament too, because the military jacked my body up. So I can't really do much in the gym like I want to.
Gotcha.
And so that's what really makes me focus on diet more of the times.
Right.
And there'll be random times that I just, I have several times that I just go and drink water only, or drink water and coconut water, and then just have fruits, for a smoothie, but it has to be an organic type of smoothie.
Yeah.
And I'll just have that. I won't drink any juice or soda or anything like that. And I'll do it 7 days, 2 weeks, or a random 30 days or whatever every now and then. And it's easy to me. I don't feel like I'm really missing anything, Right. I don't stick on it, or I don't keep myself to, if I go out and I have one or something, it's not the end of the world, because majority of the time I do have control. You know what I'm saying? The last time I had juice now, just randomly, it was maybe like 4 days ago, 5 days ago. But other than that, it's just been water, coconut water.
That's dope, bro.
And so
you know what I'm saying? Whatever works, man. That's what it was. Like for me, like I said, it was a transition for me at a time where I said, you know what? I need to make a change. Because I'm changing, I'm transitioning, I'm doing different things. So I probably should incorporate some other different things in my life. And so that's what I did, man. And it's been working. So it's no need to change it now at this point. And then, like I said, as I've began to not only just educate myself, it's become a thing where it's gratifying. Excuse me. So I just look at it as one of those things that I tried. In my opinion, it worked. It's continuing to make sense. I'm making more sense of it. And then at times I kind of go back to my purpose, where I'm making a difference in helping other people. Because then there are things now that I know about health going this route that don't necessarily have anything to do with like necessarily being vegan. But when you start looking into information like that so much, you just stumble across other information. And so at the end of the day, our food is our medicine. Facts. And we tend to forget that, because in the form in which we get our medicine from that prescription pill, something has to go in your mouth. So why not let that be your food? And so because we don't have this idea, we just look at food most times as something to satisfy our appetite, but not necessarily to increase and boost our immunity or rejuvenate us and things of that nature. But that's what it's actually based for. And because we have such a taste-based diet, we really neglect and forget, like at the end of the day, you are in many ways the representation of all things in life. So like, let's just think about a car, for instance. Your food is your gas or your oil, bro. At the end of the day, the better the oil or the better the gas you put in the car, the longer it'll last, the better it'll be. And so now if you keep putting 87 in the tank, you know what I'm saying, of a car that need 93, you're going to damage the car.
Okay, so a point to that, or something that I've been thinking about as well, is let's say somebody has a change in lifestyle and they're naturally just big boned,
Right.
and they go vegan.
Yep.
How come that person isn't as apt to lose weight the same type of way, even though they're cutting out a lot of these other things that aren't necessarily good for them?
So 2 things. Number 1, blood type plays a huge role into what it is that we put in our systems. So that could be one thing. O negative blood type and AB, 2 completely different things. There's a book on it. I can't remember the name. Just Google blood types in diet or blood types in weight loss or weight gain, and you'll see it. That's number 1. Number 2, just blanket statement. Becoming a vegan doesn't necessarily mean anything ever or now. And what I mean by that is eating Oreos. That's vegan, bro. So eating potatoes or things high in starch like pasta and rice doesn't mean that you're gonna, if the goal is to lose weight, now you're packing on carbs. Yeah. Now you're eating garbage. So that doesn't mean you're going to lose weight just because you decided to cut out dairy, to cut out poultry, to cut out beef, to cut these things out. What are you actually eating? And are those things designed to speed up your metabolism, to help you burn calories, to help you lose weight? Because there's a huge myth that I want to address, and it's the protein myth. Protein has absolutely nothing, I ain't gonna say nothing, not as much as people make it out to be, to do with weight gain and weight loss. Weight gain and weight loss has everything to do with calorie intake. So that's why people say, how many calories are you burning? So when you burn a calorie, so when you use less energy or use more energy and burn more calories and bring in less calories, that's how you lose weight. So if you put in 3,000 calories, but you only burning 2,000, you're not going to lose weight. But if you do the inverse of that, you burn 3,000 calories and you brought in 2,000, that's how you lose weight. Gotcha. So this protein idea, like I was at Beehive. I don't know if you know what that is. It's almost like a healthier version of Chipotle, but it has a lot of vegan options. Okay. Let's say. And the guy asked me, what's your protein? There's no such thing. Literally, there's no such classification of food. We've just used this idea because this is what we've been marketed. What's your protein? You know what has a lot of protein in it? Spinach. You know what has a lot of protein in it? Spirulina, chickpeas. All these. So what do you mean, what's my protein? That's just a unit of measure for amino acids. What do you mean to ask me? What beef, what poultry, what fish do I want? Because that's the actual question you're asking me. But we're using this protein myth to get people to buy into the idea that they have to eat meat in order to get protein, in order to maintain weight. But it's a myth. There's no classification. I just gave them to you. Beef, poultry, fish. If you're going to talk about meat, that's usually what we're talking about. Yeah. Pork. Why are you asking me about what my protein is? I can get protein from walnuts. So it's this, going back to almost a conversation about the doctors, it's this misinformation surrounded in pharmacy, surrounded in insurance, surrounded in Western medicine as a whole, and we're not using something that cannot necessarily be monetized in that way because they're commodities, which is the food that we eat. You really can't, as a large corporation outside of being Chiquita Banana, make money off you telling me to eat bananas or seeded grapes. Facts. What company, if that's what you're telling me to ensure that I get a certain amount of antioxidants or whatever it is, who's making money off me telling you that what you should do if you want to get rid of your diabetes is eat nothing but fruit, but a specific type of fruit, melons in particular, honeydew, watermelon, squash, zucchini. These are all melons, right? If that is the case, right? And these are things that you could just decide to do for a certain amount of time to help your body detox and flush it of the toxins and the plaque and the mucus in the body that's causing the dis-ease, right? How is Big Pharma or an insurance company going to make money off of that? And so now if you do that now, do you need the doctor? So now when you use different methods, you starting to put people out of business at the end of the day. And so what becomes the use and the need for the pharmacy when you got your own in your house? If you knew which herbs to buy, if you knew which fruit and vegetable combinations to eat, because food combining is a big thing. People don't even realize that you mess up your digestive system when you eat certain things together. So people don't realize this, and you're literally not necessarily supposed to eat and drink at the same time.
I did hear that. And when I was younger, that's definitely what was pushed. Like, you could drink after you finish your food.
Right. Because literally your water is sitting, or your liquid is sitting on top of your food. If you want that water to go directly into the cells, it should be going in there by itself. Right? Because digestion is the hardest thing for the body to do. And so now if you're putting water, liquid, food, solid, and you combine them at the same time, it's not necessarily the best thing to do for proper digestion. And people don't realize this. For proper digestion, if you're going to eat certain types of fats or avocados or fruits, you may want to wait 30 minutes as opposed to 15 minutes. You may not want to put them together. You know what I'm saying? And like people just really don't understand. Like, there is a lot to do with the things they eat that correlate even more so than what they would think is hereditary. It becomes hereditary because you're doing the same thing your parent did. Gotcha. That's that aspect. So now when you change that, you literally have the ability to change the composition of your body, whether it be working it out in terms of exercise or eating properly in terms of nutrition. That's on you. That is truly on you. Now, I'm not going to say there aren't any genetic factors, but what I am saying is the biggest factor to being healthy, to being whole, is what you put in your mouth. Because even when you get sick, they're going to give you a pill, or they're going to give you some antibiotics to drink. But those same things, if you knew what they were based on what's wrong with you, you can find that in nature. God has given us every single thing we need. And it wasn't made in the lab. It was created outside where he created us.
Facts. And so to segue that, understanding the discipline that you would have to have for that, I can see how that directly correlates with mindset. And that takes us to your company. And so I know your company's name is Positivity Pays. Walk us through that journey.
So that journey kind of came from, like I mentioned earlier, my business partner, Ramon Robinson. I was doing music a long time ago. I really didn't get into that, but I had a recording studio. I was a producer and an audio engineer since I was like, no, I'm good. Actually, yeah, I'll take it. I want to say since I was like 18, 19 years old. And I started doing it professionally at 22, 23. I actually had a song on the radio at 23 or 24. But what I recognized was I wanted to be the supplier of all the demand that was happening. There was much more demand for producers and studios than there was for independent artists. Everybody was trying to be an independent artist, which meant those independent artists needed to go somewhere to get their independent music created. And so I took that route. I took the more business route. Although I was really, really dead set on being an entertainer because I could rap. And, I had a group, and like I said, we had a song on the radio, and that's not really a part of the story I want to get into to answer your question. But
we still got to hear that freestyle though.
So what happened was we tried it that route, met some incredible people, And as we were doing that, we started to produce our own stuff, but it got to a point where once it got to having to put it on the radio, it wasn't the quality. So I was like, oh, that's not gonna work. So we had to go to somebody. So when we went to this guy, it was like, oh wow, he has all the technical aspects. Like right now, Dan is, behind the board and all that. Like it's there's a very technical aspect to production, no matter if it's visual or audio.
Facts.
Right. But that doesn't make you a great artist or creator. Right. And so this guy, he had they called him Dirty Gertie. He was in Boca, right by FAU. I was in college at the time. And he had worked with Britney Spears, Paul McCartney, Phil Mob, had a Grammy for a blues album he engineered. So I can take no credit from this man as it relates to his engineering skills. But what I recognized and realized, he didn't have what we would call today the sauce. Back in the day, it was the it.
Yeah.
And so
got the
he
juice.
he was a white dude that was taking no credit away from that. It's just culturally, he didn't understand hip hop. So the way it feels, because all our music has soul to it. And so like if you're doing like a techno or pop song, everything is what's called in the pocket. And so especially like with techno or house, it's like 4 on the floor, they call it. So it's like that doom, doom, doom. So it's easy to catch that. Right. But when it comes to hip hop, sometimes there's a swagger and a flow, and the snare drum might not just fall on too perfect, like on beat like that. And you got to understand that flow. And he just didn't have that. But what I recognized is I was paying him a lot of money for the technical aspect, because technically speaking, although the way it was recorded in our crib, it had the sauce, but it didn't have the proper frequencies. It didn't have the proper depth. It didn't have the proper compression. It didn't have the proper reverb to be on the radio, to get the actual sound to not be what's called like muddy in terms of your 808 or having sounds where it's certain EQs or you can't clearly hear everything and it's not big and it's not panned properly. Like all these things that are important. So I recognized, I was like, if I learn how to do that, he could never learn how to do what I am. This guy's 50, 60 years old. If he would have already done it or had the sauce already. I got the sauce, he got the technical skills. So as my homies are recording, we recorded like a 15, 16 song album. And like we might have messed up, the 3 of us, because it was 3 of us, 2 or 3 times. Like the whole album. Like we ran through this album so fast. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life. And so that led me to say, all right, I'm going to become that. I do this rap thing, but I'm paying him to get a proper thing, and other people are going to start paying me, because most people in my circle can't even afford him. And right now I'm stretching to afford it. So that gave me the mindset to become not so much being the person that's with the crowd that's looking for the supply. I needed to become the supplier. So studio, beats, and all that, right? So that leads me to meet a guy, right? And so everybody that would come to my studio, now that I've learned these things from Bob, sitting there analyzing them, he wondering why I'm so close to him. So imagine right now, you see where the camera is? Yeah. I'm sitting that close to Dan. And so this white guy probably super uncomfortable, but I don't care. I'm paying you money, bro. I'm gonna sit wherever I feel like it, as long as I ain't in your personal space. Cause I'm watching what you're doing. I'm watching you chop and screw. I'm watching you put the auto tune on. Damn, why did he do it like that? I'm watching you everything. So I got an education just from merely paying for studio time and watching somebody that had a Grammy be an engineer. And I decided I was gonna do that. So fast forward. Now I got my own studio, and I always been a decent salesperson, and I always had been someone that my reputation preceded me. So everybody always knew I did good business, so they would come do business with me. So I got this studio now. People had no idea I'd been rapping, so it wasn't really a hard sell, right? Everybody coming in the studio, super trapper, got all the girls, biggest guns, or beat you up if you try 'em. That was the theme. It was getting so funny to me that even in like I started doing I was recording reggaeton artists, pop artists, everybody. but everything was just so gangster. Everything was just so, for lack of a better word, negative. Mm-hmm. And I was in it. I was with the shits. Me too. Right? So this was the time where I was with all this, right? Guy comes along. Guy tells me, yeah, I was working with the Homeless Voice the other day. Yeah, I was, Pepsi just gave me a sponsorship. They bought all my CDs and albums, and all I had to do was pass them out. Oh, I got a sponsorship and a relationship with Tropical Credit Union. Yeah, like I got a contract with the United States Navy. Now, mind you, everybody's coming to the studio, super duper superhero, Shaft, the coolest nigga in the world, all this persona, right? Everybody doing that, but ain't none of them making money. This guy doing nothing but positive stuff, making money, getting stuff for free, working with big brands. And so it jarred my brain because I didn't know that. We was in that era when it was like MySpace and mixtapes. So that's what people were doing. So that's the model I was following. But that was an old 90s model. We talking 2011 at this point in time. Niggas was selling CDs out of their trunk.
Fact.
In 95. That was a Master P thing. That was a cash money. That was that. And we were still doing that 15, 20 years later, trying to catch up to what they were doing. And so this is what people were still doing. Now you had the power of the internet. So you using, I forget the sites now, but it was a bunch of them that you would put your mixtape on and all this. And this guy comes in honoring his wife, talking about his daughter. While everybody else is like, man, I got a bunch of bitches. Well, you know, when we leave, bro, you know what it is. Like, well, what y'all boys get into? Where the hoes at? That type of language and vocabulary and environment was the environment that not only was I in, but it was one that I was cultivating because, again, in that environment, you smoking, you drinking, you doing all these different things, right? And then so with him being so different, he just stood out so much. Everything was just like, but it wasn't corny. It wasn't like he was a square though. You know, you would think like and so for years he would come through, chop it up, and then our relationship just got more serious and more serious. And because I was kind of like the guy at my studio, although I had partners, he always gravitated to me. And you could see that from a distance. And so, you know, I did the studio thing. I turned 30, right? My dad always put in my mind, son, when you turn 30, make sure you're stable in life. Now, at this time, just being honest, the studio thing wasn't stable. It was up and down. Some months we make money, some months we don't. And there were times that I actually took money out of my own personal pocket, would pay the landlord. And my partners probably never heard me say this, so if they hear this, it's going to be funny to them. And tell them the rent was still late. I would pay the landlord to see what they was going to do. And they still wouldn't change. Damn. And so this thing kind of became something where I was doing, and this was just not too long after the bailout, like Obama in like 08, 09, right? So like in my mind, and when I told somebody, it was like, yeah, bro, you keep bailing them out, bro. Like it ain't gonna never change. You get what I'm saying? So not to say that they didn't work hard, not to say it just wasn't the best fit because they had other things going on in their life, some of them, and then and I wasn't the perfect guy. Let me, by no stretch of the imagination, but like I put so much energy, so much time. It was almost like the universe telling me, your dad did tell you about turning 30, and then something happened when I was about 29, turning 30, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just let this go. So that's when the transition about becoming vegan, becoming a real estate agent, becoming a tax preparer. These things started to happen around that time. And most of that stuff I bought with my money. I just left it. I let the guys keep it. I didn't care about it. It was no animus. It was no smoke, nothing like that. And around that time, that same guy that I was telling you, the same guy honoring his wife, the same guy saying put the guns down, the same guy not being a dope dealer but a hope dealer, just kept being in my life. Like, yo, bro, let's just keep in contact. Like he just kind of just stayed in the space. And so I would end up doing his taxes for him and his wife. and he just would keep at me. He would just keep telling me the things that I wouldn't put together. He would just keep telling me that he was getting these opportunities. He was working with these organizations, working with nonprofit organizations that deal with battered women. But they're cutting him a check to talk to the youth about how men and young boys can stop domestic violence. They're cutting him a check to be in spaces and places to mentor. That again, most people wouldn't make this connection. And so as he kept doing this over and over, one day I kind of finally just said, and I know this is the longest answer to the question. I haven't forgot it.
But that's good. We want the story. This is what we need.
Right. He just kept at it. So now, not only did he keep in my space, in my sphere, he now began to ask me questions like, bro, you'll manage me? And I'm like, I just feel like I ain't had the time because I was making this new transition into this new life.
Yeah.
Doing these other things. And then one day I just said, you know what? I've never seen anything like this. And I do need to do more in the community because now as time is progressing, we starting to get into the times where like Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, like it's starting to get in. So now I'm starting to become more elevated in my consciousness. Now remember, my dad had already gave me a foundation to do the right thing and to feel a certain way. But seeing these things happen in my community and then having this man doing things in the community, not only from the standpoint of just fulfillment and feeling better about making a difference. Again, remember what my uncle said about being a difference maker. Like all these things start to come full circle. And so I just decided one day, I was like, you know what, bro? I'm going to take you up on it. Whether it's management or partners, let's just do something, right? It wasn't none of it. We just did something. And so we had a relationship with an individual named Paul Porter. Paul Porter used to be a director at BET.
Okay.
Right? He's actually the mentor to Wendy Williams,
Sheesh.
Joy Reid, that's on MSNBC. Paul Porter is and was a big deal. He has a book. It's called Black Something, but it talks about the corruption in the music industry, right? So just look up Paul Porter in his book and you'll see it. But what happens is we having this conversation, and he says Paul Porter got a blog, Rap Rehab, still up to this day, a lot of hits. So I end up writing a story on my soon-to-be official partner, right? At this time, I'm just blogging about a individual that's doing incredible things, opening up for Lil Dicky at Sunfest, getting paid to rap, getting paid to be in the community, doing this positive thing, while all these other rappers, you got to fight with promoters, you going to open mics, you ain't selling no CDs. So I wrote a line that forever changed everything. I basically was saying Ramon Robinson is basically changing the way you look at hip hop artists, and they say sex sells, but we say positivity pays. Now that's all the line was. That was in the article. So one day we now start to discuss like, bro, we catching fire. We starting to mentor more. People are asking us to do stuff. And now we need an official capacity to receive checks. But I had a company called Feed the Streets that we could do that through, and that's what we was doing. That's been my moniker for so long. And so, but we needed something, him and I at this point.
Yeah.
And so we was talking about like what we represented. And I believe this to be true. And this is something I talk about as a consultant now about branding, but I didn't know it at the time. I felt like it was the perfect brand positioning. If anybody wanted to think about what it is that we did or what we were about, to call ourselves Positivity Pays, to let you know off the rip that that's where we at. We paying it forward. We doing things in terms of having positive images, in terms of positive representation, in terms of just being overall positive vibes. And so in that name, you already know what time it is with us. Facts. And so that's kind of where it came from. It was an article that was written about the amazing things he was doing before we became partners. And then as we was having conversations about like people are asking for us now. Because remember I told you, I just said, fuck it. You know what? I'm gonna work with you, bro. I don't know how we gonna do it. But now as we started working together and people started seeing me with him, they started making a connection. Like, oh man, Brand that used to do this is with him. Da, da, da. So once that started, we had to come up with something.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of led to that going against the grain. And it shouldn't be going against the grain to be positive. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but again, oftentimes people are going to say, and I'm not saying it doesn't. People want to say sex sells. All right, well, you know, positivity pays then. And that's how we got to the name.
I like that. You know, just it just even taking in that whole story, like, you know, because on here we pretty much just go into the backstory of everybody that comes in here and has a different type of profession, or even if they have the same profession, somebody could have a complete different way they get to a certain mindset shift. And, you know, even in hearing that particular way, you know, sometimes we have to be doing the quote unquote wrong thing in order to begin doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
Nah, that's definitely dope. So you would say the major mindset shift came from Ramon.
I would say if and I wouldn't say it was major. I say just a light bulb went off or something. Imagine someone that has been meek, and I'm not saying this is me, but I'm just giving you an analogy. Imagine somebody that's been meek all their life to the outward world, right? But we don't know at the end of the day that when this guy goes home, the reason why he's so meek is because he's so lethal and deadly. And the reason he's so lethal and deadly is because he studies Muay Thai, let's say, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody will ever know until that gets activated, until somebody tries to prey upon that meek nature, right? Then people will know that there's a beast within that individual.
Facts.
Right? I'm saying that to say this. It wasn't a major mindset shift because, like I said, I had 2 fathers and 2 mothers. So I had the proper balance of masculine and feminine energy to make me a holistic person, regardless. My focus just wasn't necessarily my community, wasn't necessarily the youth. It was just doing the right thing, doing business the right way. What shifted was the fact that somebody said, hey, bro, if we do it like this, I promise you, we can go places you never imagined. My foundation was already there. Right. My uncle, my 2 dads, my 2 moms, my environment, although, again, I'm getting pushed and pulled in certain directions. I got older, what I would consider my older brothers, 4 or 5 years older than me, having me try liquor when I'm way too young, or do these things with women or treat women a certain way. I had all those influences. And again, going back to the music and the media, all that existed. But there was nothing stronger than that force of that foundation. And because that force and that foundation was there, it was easy for me to make a decision to make what you're calling a major shift when Ramon just kept at it. And it was not only him keeping at it, there were results behind what he was saying and doing. And again, it was something I had never seen before. And I've always been a creative. One thing I didn't mention was going back to saying I could have been a valedictorian if I would have got off, if I never would have got on so heavy with females in football, was that at my elementary school, it was a magnet program. But you didn't start the magnet program until you were in the 3rd grade. I was the only kid in the school, a predominantly white school now, to start in the 2nd grade. Now, we're talking about a magnet program that's based on the performing arts. So what did I do? I was in the band and I was playing the piano or the keyboard at the time. And so my level of innovation and creativity came from being so young and being so smart and doing things like that. And so what Ramon was doing to me was in that vein. It was innovative. It was creative ways to now get his message in front of people. So instead of trying to get the masses that are listening to a particular type of hip hop, you know who's listening to his music? Nonprofit organizations that got kids that saying, oh yeah, I just booked this guy to come speak, but now I'm streaming his his music. Now I'm buying his album. It was a completely different way in which he went about things. And then that turned into what most people do now, which is write books.
Facts.
Right? If you see any effective speaker, right, that's making a lot of money, they got a book. When you look at the people at the top of the game, let's just go for social media that we can see, right? The Eric Thomases of the world has books. The Grant Cardones of the world has books. Gary V has books. Myron Golden,
everybody
has books, right? And so this guy was there, but from the hip hop perspective, on the independent perspective, not necessarily being known perspective, understanding that the root word of authority is author. So authors usually have authority or understanding or expertise in the things in which they write about.
Facts.
And so that authority becomes a branding tool that you now use to get opportunities that ordinarily you don't just get with a CD. And a CD filled with things that make you a comic book character in your own lyrical world that makes you the best at everything when oftentimes you're not.
No, most definitely. And so with the experience that you've cultivated and the discipline that you've cultivated, towards mindset, what would you give me 3 key pieces of advice that you would give upcoming talent?
So I would say, to be completely honest, because I've had so many different experiences, we have to realize that Drake wasn't lying when he said everything is the same. So what does that mean?
Facts.
Right. Everything being the same is the fact that if any of us right now went to a Forex trader that was trying to teach you how to be the best day trader of the foreign exchange market, you know what the first thing they would tell you have to get right, outside of the fact that you got to understand charts and understand currency and understand currency pairs?
Mindset.
The first thing they're going to tell you. So the first thing I would tell an up-and-coming artist is get your mind right first before you do anything. So before you write your music, before you start to understand the music business, make sure that you are prepared mentally to do all the things that you believe that you want to do.
Facts.
So that's number 1. Number 2, in terms of mindset, we got to realize garbage in, garbage out. So how do you develop a mindset, right? I'm telling you that the mindset is something that you better focus in on first. But going back to what I was saying about authority and authors, what are you reading? What are you listening to? Who's around you? Who influences you? Where do you get your information from? The reason why your mindset is the way that it is because it's a combination of your experiences, your values, and your the things that you see on a consistent basis. So if you want to get your mind right, you're going to have to now find things in which can do that. Because if it's thinking a certain way, it's been thinking that way for a particular reason because you've been reading, listening, watching certain things. So now guard your garden. Treat your mind like a farm.
Chico.
And at the end of the day, whatever you plant will harvest. Number 2. And number 3, and I think most importantly is the fact that we have to realize that outside of planting and cultivating and outside of it being the thing that you have to do first, it being first is also the reason why it's the most important. So your craft is cool, right? But there are people with the right mindset and the wrong skill set, let's say proverbial in terms of artists, rapping, that are further along than you because mindset is most important. There are a lot of people that can't rap.
Facts.
But it doesn't matter because their mind was set on a particular outcome, which was being successful, right? And so they find out what the actual money-making activities are, or the activities that move the needle, and they focus on those things. Far too often, we focus personally and professionally on things that actually don't matter. So we waste a lot of time on that. So I would tell that individual, please do not waste your time on things that don't move the needle. And oftentimes we focus on things and we spend times on things and we say we want to do things on things that don't move the needle. And you have to be constantly moving the needle in order to be successful.
Nah, facts. That's, man, Brandon, you snapped. You took us through a whole journey of just body discipline, understanding the importance of eating proper, the difference in eating proper and how it affects your body, but just the general scope of mindset and experience, being able to have a connection with somebody of that type of mindset. That's not, when people, just like you said, when people kind of categorize that positivity, they always think like, oh, cornball or whack or herb, you know what I'm saying? But you're somebody that you could really have a conversation with and enjoy the shit out of that conversation, really enjoy that vibe and not be jaded by the negative things. You can still speak positively and impact a lot of different things. So just, kudos to you, flowers to you for how
Appreciate
you
that.
really just give back to the community in the way of intellectual property. Not everybody does it from that type of sense. And then you do it a lot more for the youth. That. And, that's something that I'm more passionate towards as well. So, I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
I appreciate you having me,
and
man.
if people want to really tap in with anything you have going on, where can they find you?
So you can absolutely find me on the dinosaur of social media, Facebook. So just facebook.com/Brandon Freeny. I'm not as active on Instagram, but again, I said it before, like I've been using the moniker of Feed the Streets. So just FEEDA Streets. That's basically my handle on Instagram, and then Brandon Freeny on LinkedIn. I gotta jump on TikTok because I understand it's the wave. And when I was doing the TikToks, like if you want to grow on social media the fastest right now, TikTok is absolutely the way.
Facts.
All the other ones are so focused on getting revenue and ad dollars. They kind of force you to spend money to reach your own audience, right? Yep. That you've already developed and grown. But TikTok still has that organic growth. Like I'm still getting followers to this day, and I stopped posting like 6 months ago. That would never happen on Instagram or TikTok. Facts. I mean Instagram or Facebook.
Facts.
And so like it's one of those things that, although getting older, I don't want to embrace it. I kind of have to. And that's just gonna segue into the last thing so we could wrap up. There is a wave coming. There is a trend coming outside of even social media, and it's AI. And I want people to be aware. I want people to not be afraid, because even if you believe that AI is bringing the end of the world, like if you're taking on that myth, why not prepare yourself in a way in which you make that the most comfortable situation for you at the end of the day by arming yourself and educating yourself on it. And so the thing that I would want to say is to embrace this new technology, because if you don't, you can end up being the guy that used to make wheels for buggies and carriages, and the guy that used to have horses in a stable for transportation until the car came. You can end up being the travel agent that has no business at this point because Expedia exists. Right. You could be the small mom and pop, I don't know, print or delivery company that no longer exists because email and digital technology has now made mail less and less important. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can become these things that were heavily relied upon. We were using horses in carriages for thousands of years. Not the carriages, but the horses for transportation. It took about 20 years for all that to change. 1910 to about 1930. Like, whole industry gone. No more need for so much hay. No more need for whatever created the buggy. Now we got the car. And so now if we want to be slow to it, we see the self-checkout. That's just automation. That's not even AI.
Facts.
When the AI now meets the automation, it's going to be a whole different ball game. And so we really, really need to pay attention. And as I'm saying, as I'm getting older, I'm going to embrace TikTok more because I see and know where it's going. We need to understand that we need to see and know where AI is going and take ourselves there.
No, most definitely. I agree with that. That's AI is a whole nother story when it comes to, getting ahead, especially from a mindset type of perspective.
Right. And that's what it's going to take. And that's why I mentioned the idea of the end of the world, because I know that's a mindset thing. And I know that sometimes we're slow to change and slow to resist. I mean, we're slow to transition on the new things. And that's why I made the references to the things of the past that we've seen take over industry and get rid of things, because again, having a proper attractive mindset, right, to understand the things that are going to be the most attractive, we need to run into that direction and run fast because it's happening.
Most def. Brandon, this man, make sure you tap in with him. He is just a well-rounded individual that's going to get you where you need to go, no matter how. If he don't know it, then he knows somebody who probably does and can connect you. Absolutely. Just an overall connector and just a good guy to just know in a lot of different places, a lot of different scenes. He has a busy schedule, so make sure you tap in with him. Make sure you, schedule some time with him. And if you like this episode, make sure you share, tell a friend, tune in, tap in. And as we say, we look good, we live good, life is good. Talk to us, we talk back, and we out of here.